Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock and this is City of Heroes. We are with our Dominator, Mister Eclipse, who's level 35. And this is the third attempt I'm making to record a video at this level. Have not been happy with my first two attempts. Hopefully third time is the charm. We're on the Terra Conspiracy, so we're fighting some Devouring Earth, which can only be a challenge to this guy if I miss too much and they hit me with one of their mezzes. Otherwise, this guy's actually pretty good against the Devouring Earth because he can lock them down and stop them from a lot of their annoying things like putting out swarms and stuff. So today I'm going to actually talk about something I didn't talk about on the other two videos because I actually didn't like the topic I was doing. So we'll abandon that. Today we're going to talk about rules lawyers. Luke Hart has a video out called the Player Everybody Hates. What is it called? Let me look it up. It's called... hang on a sec, guys. The DM layer... It is called the D&D player that everyone loathes. And, of course, the answer is it's the rules lawyer. And he had something really interesting when he was talking. He did a great skit to open the video, to show you how rules lawyers act and why they're annoying. So that's really fun to watch, and I recommend you go ahead and go watch it on the DM layer. This came out about, I don't know, a week or two ago. But what I want to do today is kind of react to that video and talk about it a little bit and kind of add my own thoughts about rules lawyering and that sort of thing. So one of the things that he talked about, which I hadn't really thought about, but I thought was actually quite interesting, was he said there are actually three types of people who are really knowledgeable about the rules, and only one of them is annoying, and that's the rules lawyer. But before he got to the rules lawyer, he talked about the other types of people who are good at the rules. So the first one he called the rules sage. And the rules sage, he said, is the guy who knows all the rules. He probably knows them better than anybody else at the table, even the dungeon master. And the rules sage is somebody who, if ever you guys don't know a rule, you can ask the rules sage, and he knows the answer, and he can tell you the answer. But what Luke said was the rules sage recognizes the authority of the GM to change the rules, right? The old rule 0, where what the GM says goes, kind of, and also recognizes the fact that there's something like something called the rule of cool, and they're okay with that. They don't mind it if you break the rules for the sake of the game and that sort of thing. They know what the rules are supposed to be, but they're okay with it if you make some changes or say we're not going to play it that way because it's more fun to play it this other way. Right? Okay, that's fine, but they know what all the rules are, right? That's the rule sage, and he points out that these guys are usually fine. They're harmless. They're actually a huge benefit to the game because if you don't know a rule, the rule sage is always going to know it, and he can explain it to you and tell you how to do it. Well, the right way to do it is this, but it's up to you guys if you want to play it that way. And so, like in Champions, I'm a rule sage, I guess. I know all the rules of Champions. I'm not really a sage in anything else. I don't know all the rules of Savage Worlds yet. And I messed some stuff up even this weekend. And we actually had a break, and we came back from the break. The one player was like, is this really the way we're supposed to play it? And I said, I think it is. And as we were talking, the other player came back, and he said, actually, I thought it was this. And I looked up a couple of, it was about how a certain power worked, and I looked up a couple of similar powers, and I said, you know what, I think you're right. Okay, we'll play it that way from now on. Right? So none of us are sages, but, it definitely helps to have other people kind of looking at the rules and looking things up and that sort of thing. And the rule sage can be really good because you don't even need to look rules up when the rule sage is there. They just kind of know how this rule is typically interpreted and how this part of the game is typically played. So that's one type, and Luke said they're basically almost always a benefit to the table, right? Because it's really good to have somebody there who knows how the rules are supposed to be played in case you want to know. But it's good that that same person is usually perfectly okay to be flexible and not play it the way it says in the rules is written if the team has decided, if the people at the table have decided they'd rather not. The next example, the next type of character that the next type of player that Luke mentioned. Oh, see, we're sleeping. Is the rules devotee, and he said this person is a lot like the rules sage, except, and to borrow a phrase from Champions, their motto is "No, do it right." That is to say, they want the rules to be followed. They don't recognize the validity of the rule of cool, and they just want to do rules as written all the time. And they're willing to stop the session to look up a rule so that you do it right. They'll even kind of narc on themselves when they realize they've been doing something incorrect and say, I'm going to penalize myself because I did this wrong and I've gotten an unfair advantage based on the rules, even though the GM said it was okay, right, or didn't stop it. He said the rules devotee will probably be okay with retconning things and replaying things just because he'd rather do it right. And so one of my friends currently is, I think, a rules devotee. He's the one who's gotten himself into trouble when other players are trying to do rule of cool, and he's like, that's not what it says in the rules, right? A rules sage would say that's not what it says in the rules, but if you guys want to do it, go ahead. But a rules devotee is going to be like, no, 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 we should be doing it the way it says in the rules, right? They're always going to prefer playing rules as written, and they know all the rules. So the rules devotee and the rules sage are pretty similar. They like playing by the rules, they know all the rules, and they mostly just differ in how flexible they are at saying, well, it's okay to, do rule of cool and violate what it says in the rule book, right? He said neither of these two guys are really rules lawyers in the negative sense that it's often used, and mostly their benefits or like a net zero to the game, right? The rules devotee might annoy some people who want to do rule of cool, but he mostly is just trying to get the game played right, and he's going to penalize his own character if he feels like his character did something wrong. And this friend of mine who's a rules devotee and doesn't like the rule of cool is absolutely like that. He penalizes his own character a lot, right? So like in playing a wizard in D&D, according to the rules of 5th edition, you have to like spend money on inscribing new spells into your spell book, and the GM was going to just let him ignore that, and he's like, no, 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 I can't put these spells into my spell book because I don't have the money for them. And he, like, again, penalizes his own character. He realizes in between sessions we messed up a rule, so I'm going to just dock myself 1d8 hit points, right? Just to make sure that everything's copacetic. That's the rules devotee, right? So he's not really harming anybody. If anything, he's harming himself. Those sorts of guys, those sorts of guys really aren't that much of a problem to play with. Unless you're obsessed with the rule of cool and you really don't like following the rules or something like that. So what's a rules lawyer and why are they the guy everybody hates to play with? Well, what Luke says is that the rules lawyer is somebody who knows all the rules. But what they're doing is they're arguing the idiosyncratic details of the rules for their own personal gain, their own advantage, right? They're trying to win D&D or Champions or Rollmaster or Pathfinder or whatever it is. They're trying to win Pathfinder and have their character gain unfair advantage because of some obscure rule that most people don't know about, right? So they're basically power gaming using the rules. I'm probably not allowed to say the words on YouTube that Champions calls this type of character, but let's just say it's a character that likes to eat grapes while reading the rules. And so, yeah, Luke's point is that the reason rules lawyers are problematic isn't really because of the rules. It's because of how they're trying to treat the rules as an instrument to benefit themselves and their own character, right? To become the star of the show. And also, just because he said they want to win D&D, but even more so, they want to win the argument, right? They want to win the argument. And what's going to happen is if they don't agree with you about the rules, they're going to fight with you, argue with you, wheedle and cajole and complain and not let it go until they win the argument, because it's more important to them to win the argument than to play D&D or Champions. And these people are actually problematic because they're going to grind the session to a halt until they get their way. They're incredibly selfish, right? Because they're willing to do things that will harm the play at the table for everybody else just to benefit themselves. And the stupid part is, a lot of times they're not even having all that much fun either. They just have to win the argument. And so I guess I just wanted to kind of comment about that and mention that video. And I really think that these types of players can be among the most problematic, right? Because they're power gamers, but they're using the excuse that they're just following the rules. It says this in the rule book, right? It says it. Why won't you just let me do what it says in the rules? Right? And what's going on is, of course... Oh, we're sleeping again. What's going on is, of course, you're telling them they can't do it because it's harming the play of the table for other people. And that's not something generally that the rules devotee or the rules sage is doing, right? Instead, they're just talking about the rules and saying let's play by the rules, but they're not, like, again, the rules devotee is willing to and often will penalize themselves for making a mistake of the rules that benefited their character. They're not trying to get a benefit. They're just trying to play the game right by the rules, you know? And that's different from the rules lawyer who's trying to play the game to benefit themselves. And so this goes back to what I always say about playing role-playing games with other people, right? Tabletop role-playing games, is that you always want to be stewards of each other's fun, and you want to make sure you're shepherding the fun of the other player, that you're taking care of it. And if everybody does that, then you're going to have a good game. And if somebody's not doing that, you're going to have a bad game, because that person is going to basically lord it over the rest of the game group. And that's no good. Oh, we have a boss over here. Okay, so that's not good at all. Let's dominate. And then we'll AoE these guys. And then I'm just going to focus on the boss here. Did you see I actually mind controlled the boss? That's pretty cool. So we have swarms coming after me. I was going to do some melee, but they haven't attacked me yet. Are the swarms actually attacking himself? Like, are his own swarms attacking him? It looks like they might be. Now they're attacking me. Here, AoE. Takes a long time for that to fire off. So what do you guys think? I mean, have you encountered rules lawyers like this, and what did you do about them? I mean, unfortunately, it can be very difficult to handle, because there's a sense in which they could argue they're quote unquote right because they're just following the rules, but they're really not just following the rules. They're often very selective about which rules they're following. They're often going to be, unlike the rules devotee, who's always going to want to do it right, or the rules sage, who's always going to know whether you're doing it right, and whether they say it or not is kind of an open question. The rules lawyer is always going to be selective. They're only going to lawyer the rules that benefit them to talk about, right? If their character gets an advantage here, they'll talk about that and try to argue that that rule should be working that way. But if following the rules would give their character a disadvantage, they won't say anything. They'll just let it go because they'd get an advantage by keeping quiet and nobody noticing that the rule is being applied incorrectly. So yeah, it's a really interesting video. I encourage people to go ahead and watch it. I really liked it a lot. I especially liked the opening skit. I thought it was pretty cool. So if you're interested, go ahead and check that out. The other thing I thought I would do, let me go ahead and do this so that you guys can kind of see what this is like, because it was hard for me to picture actually what the result of this would be when Luke Hart suggested it. And so I have the results, so I want to like read it for you guys, and you can see how it goes. So Luke Hart has what he calls a role-playing game feedback form, right? And what he suggests in his book, which is about DMing advice, right? Well, I can't remember the name of his book, but it's like a GM's handbook or something. And so the secret art of game mastering, that's it. And in that book, he talks about the importance of getting useful feedback from your players. And what he suggests, and he made a video about this, and what he suggested in the video was go to Google Forms, which I did, make an anonymous survey, which I did, and you just ask them a few questions. You don't want a long survey. Nobody's going to do that. But you just ask them one question with a multiple choice answer, and then like 3 or 4 open-ended questions, and see what the responses are. And I got some really cool and interesting responses, and I just wanted to sort of share with you how this works. And I want to give it the big thumbs up because I think this worked really well. I've already changed some of the things I'm planning to do. And my group did this before our last session, but our last session was a huge giant battle, so we did not have time to talk about it in the last session. But I'm hoping in our next session, which is going to happen shortly before Christmas, and will be the last session of the year, I'm hoping that we'll get to a point where toward the end of the session we can actually spend a half an hour or so talking about this. So let me do the setup for you, and then we'll get back to play. The first question is, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 is I love it and 1 is I don't like it, how satisfied would you say you are with the campaign, right? And then there are 3 questions, and this is something they told us to do, not worded exactly like this, but to do in teaching. And I've never actually done this with my students, but I might, since I really like the way this worked for my game group. The first is, what's one thing that you're enjoying that we should keep doing or do more of, right? That we should keep doing. The second one is, what's one thing you dislike that we're doing that you wish we would stop doing? And then I put in parentheses, or do less frequently, right? Because sometimes it's not that you want to completely stop it, but you wish we wouldn't do so much. And then the third question is, what's one thing you wish we would start doing, or if we're only doing a little of it, you wish we would do it more frequently? And so as we go, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of read through this, and you can see what answers my players gave, and then we'll talk about, like how I would implement it. You can think about how you would implement it, what you think about these answers, and if you have comments and stuff about like how you would answer these questions for your own campaign if you're playing in one, or if you want to run this survey and then tell us what your players responded if you're game masters. I think 1 or 2 people who do the comments here are game mastering, and 1 or 2 are playing. Yeah, feel free to let us know like either how you would answer your own survey, or if you're a GM and you want to deploy the survey, let us know, how similar or differently your players were to mine. And I think that would actually probably be very informative. So on a scale of 1 to 5, I had 1 player rated a 5 out of 5. 2 rated a 4 out of 5, and 1 rated a 3 out of 5. Now, it's anonymous, so I don't know who rated it what. Don't really know why it's a 3, a 4, or a 5, right? I have the feeling, if I'm going to guess, I try to tell myself I wouldn't try to guess who's saying what, but it's hard not to when it's only 4 people and I know them pretty well. That the girl I call the new girl who started playing D&D with us, she's also a huge fan of the Wildcard show and has watched the entire ETU show twice and most of the way through the Deadlands show now once. And she really loves that group, and she really loves Savage Worlds, and so and she really likes Deadlands, and so I suspect she might be the 5. Not sure who the 3 is. It could be any of them. My knee-jerk reaction would have been my best friend, but as the surveys were coming in, two people did it, and then two people came later, and I'm not sure that he's the one who did that. I feel like one of the other players might have done that because given it a 3 because when I asked them what do you want to do next, one of them said, well, my first choice would be D&D, but I know you don't want to run that, so my second choice is to keep playing Deadlands. So it might be that it's a 3 out of 5 because rather be playing another game. Don't know. Didn't ask that question and don't want to know the answer because that's not the survey. So it averages a 4 out of 5. I'll take it. I think that's not so bad. Nobody gave it a 1 or a 2, thankfully. If someone had, then I would have said, okay, guys, we might have to get rid of the anonymity here. And somebody gave us a 1. That's potentially problematic. We might need to talk about it. Let's talk about the one thing that they said that they enjoy about the game that we should keep doing. The first person said, what I enjoy the most are the moments of highly unlikely success or catastrophic failure and locations of ridiculous or intense role play, i.e. the memorable moments. They aren't exactly something that can directly be engineered. So I thought of simply saying, just playing. Right? So this person, when you boil it down, what they're saying is they want a game where you can have crit success and crit fail. Right? Doesn't have to be Savage Worlds, but they want a game where the game system has a critical success and critical failure system. I mean, maybe they wouldn't even express it that way, but it seems to me that that's probably a way to help them get what they want. The unscripted catastrophes or the unscripted great moments are a little easier to do when you can crit success and crit fail. Right? And some systems have that and some don't. Like Champions, it doesn't really have a critical success and critical failure. A 3 on 3d6 is an automatic success or hit, and an 18 is an automatic miss. But there's nothing critical about it. You just miss, right? You don't like hit yourself or something like that, or your gun jam. That doesn't happen unless you make a luck roll or an unluck roll, right? So that's been separated in the mechanics from a success or failure, and therefore, if you want these sort of catastrophic successes and failures that are unexpected, you're probably looking at something like Rollmaster or Savage Worlds or something like that, rather than Champions. D&D has they don't really have they have critical hits, but they don't really have critical failures or fumbles or any of that by default in the rules in 5e. Now they might, I don't know if they ever. They were talking about maybe doing it in 6e. I don't know if they ever got around to it. It's possible. I just don't really know. So if anybody knows, go ahead and leave it in the comments. If there are other games that have critical successes and failures like that, go ahead and post those in the comments too, so that if anybody's players feel like they like the sort of swinginess of the critical successes and failures, we know of other games that have it. So that's the first person. The second person said, I enjoy investigating strange happenings and solving mysteries. So my guess is that's probably the person. I don't even know if it has it parsed out this way, and I'm not going to check because, again, it's supposed to be anonymous. I would guess this is the person who gave it the 5, because that's literally what you're doing in Deadlands, is investigating strange happenings and weird circumstances. Another person said solving mysteries, combat, and social interaction. That could also be the person whose 5 is basically, I like solving mysteries, combat, and social interactions. That's basically playing the game. And to some degree, the first person said, I almost thought about just saying my favorite thing that we should keep doing is just playing. I'm not sure these 3 people got the spirit of the question, because I was trying to figure out, okay, is there something that we're doing that you want to keep doing, and you want to put that in there, because if somebody else said, I want to stop doing it, you need to know that, well, one person might want to stop it, but the other person wants to keep doing it. And I do want to mention here that when they did this when an instructor I know did this and said, what should we stop doing? The student said, stop giving tests and start giving no tests. Like the professor was like, yeah, I can't do that. So that's the third person. And then the fourth person said, having a good balance of combat versus skill challenge versus social versus exploration versus goofing off, and having a great group of players that are mature and creative and respectful. You said respectful. Yeah, you said one, but I regret nothing. I think I know who wrote that. Um, and I think that's the girl in Finland because it just sounds like her. Maybe I'm wrong, but um, all of these players seem to be saying, let's just keep doing what we're doing because I kind of like what we're doing. Give us a good mix of stuff. We've definitely had. So what has happened in my group is individual sessions are often biased toward one thing or another. So for instance, the last session we had was basically a 3-hour battle. It was a huge end of campaign battle against the Dark Mother, the what they call the quivering aspen or the quaking aspen, but what I called her was the Mother Tree in the dark heart of the forest. She's sometimes called the Dark Mother. Um, but yeah, they fought the Mother Tree. They fought the replicants that the Mother Tree had enslaved, and at the end of the battle, they had used fire, and so they started a fire, and the woods are going up, and it doesn't say this in the rules, but I decided there's a bunch of ghost rock, and the trees are sentient because of the ghost rock. Well, ghost rock is flammable, so I said it. Their sap is full of ghost rock, and they're all starting to explode. So in the next session, they're going to have to do a dramatic task to get out, and to get out in time before the whole thing blows up. And they've brought their horses with them unwisely, so now they're going to have to figure out how to get their horses out of there safely, and that may complicate things. And so it could be a really, hopefully, interesting and epic dramatic task, which is a different type of thing. So we've had sessions that were just role-play and investigation. We've had sessions that were dramatic tasks. We've had sessions that were just combat. And we've had sessions where you have a couple of things going off at once. So I feel like there's a pretty good balance. The players seem to be saying there's a pretty good balance, and this is what they're saying, keep up. So I guess in that sense it's good, and we have a fairly good balance. Let's look at the second question. What's one thing you dislike about the game that you wish we would stop doing? And I do want to say one of the things I changed about this survey was I didn't say what you want me to stop doing. It could be me, but I said we. Because I recognize it could be the case, and it actually turns out it may be, that the players could be doing something that the other players wish they would stop. Right? So, if I were answering this question about my game group in Candlekeep, right, what I would say, oh, I hate this room. I can never figure out how to get to all the different spots. What I would say about that is, I wish we would stop using familiars to explore every frickin' thing. Right? I would really rather we just explore things ourselves. Right? And stop pre-exploring things with the dang familiars, because to me that's just really cowardly, and it means that one person is sort of remote exploring the dungeon while the rest of us sit there and watch, and I don't like that. And so if I were going to ask this question, I'd say one thing I wish we would stop doing is using all the dang familiars all the time. Like, I don't mind them coming out once in a while, but I hate that the whole session sometimes is about the pets. Like, I didn't come here to watch your guys' pets play D&D. I came here to play D&D. So, I mean, I would probably not say it that way because that's a little bit, adversarial. But I would try to find some way to say that that's what I don't like, and that's got nothing to do with the GM, right? So let's take a look at what they answered. What's one thing you wish we would stop doing or do less of? The first one is that occasionally folks get into doing 16 things at once in a round of combat, and it drags a bit, but it's much worse in D&D. I don't know that it's any better in Savage Worlds, right? Because you could do up to 3 actions, and unfortunately, so this is a player thing, right? I generally don't have the villains take multi-actions, because multi-actions impose a penalty. A lot of times the villains are extras. Extras already don't have a wild die and often can't hit, so I just have them do one thing. One thing I realized after we played, and I don't know if I would have done it with the replicants because I don't feel like they're that smart, but I definitely need to have the extras support each other and do tests more. Because when you have like 8 extras fighting 4 PCs, you could have each extra, like you have 2 extras, 1 test and 1 support, and then the third extra shoot, and you're like, they're vulnerable +2, support +2, and now all the extras +4 to hit. If it's a ranged attack, they're going to hit, right? And it makes it much more dangerous. So I've got to do a lot more of that. So anyway, but this, other than that, this is a player problem because I don't usually have enemies do a lot of multi actions. I just have them do one. And like the tree, I specifically said I gave it a bunch of powers that were like spells, but they weren't spells, so it wasn't doing like regular spell casting. The powers just sort of automatically worked on a spirit roll because the tree doesn't have certain stats. It's just a tree. I actually don't like the way they did the tree, but I kept it kind of the way it was. But I gave it a bunch more powers, and I just said it can only do one of these around. Like it had entangle, and I said once it's entangled somebody, it can't entangle a second person until the first entangle is gone. Right? It can't put somebody to sleep until the entangle is gone. It can't entangle until the sleep is over. So it can only do it to one person. So they couldn't turn the whole posse into being entangled or asleep because that would have been boring. So it was semi-effective, but I didn't do multi-actions with it. The players, however, the one of the player characters has the sloth speed power. They always cast it. They almost always get it with a raise. And when you've got sloth speed with a raise, what this means is that the player character who's got the thing, and he always AoEs it and does it to the whole posse, right? They have, um, they have uh, the ability to double their pace, run without penalty, double their run, so they can move all over the battlefield, and then they can ignore multi-action penalties for a second action. So everybody can do 2 actions for +0 or 3 actions for -2, and often they have enough bonuses that they can go ahead and do 3 actions, right? So if one player doesn't like the fact that they're always doing multi-actions, well, you need to talk to the player who's running sloth speed. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, because it may be that the person, I hope this isn't the person who does sloth speed, because it'd be like, dude, you're complaining about the thing you do. Then don't do it. When you have the entire posse going 3 times around, that means that there's 12 actions to resolve every round just for the player characters. Now imagine if I have the villains do it. That makes rounds go a long time. Our battle lasted 3 hours because it was 7 rounds. It's probably the longest combat I've run since we started playing again, either in D&D or Savage Worlds, right? And so the combat is dragging out. Not only was it 7 rounds, but there were 8 enemies plus the mother tree plus 4 player characters, and the player characters were all going 3 times. So you're resolving like 20 to 30 things around. It's a lot, right? Even if you resolve something every minute, and there or every 30 seconds or every minute, and there are 25 things to resolve, it's 25 minutes a round, right? So it's no surprise that 7 rounds took us 3 hours. And so someone didn't like that. So this is a conversation now that we need to have about, guys, do we always need to do sloth speed? Do we always need to do multi-actions? Multi-actions are allowed, but they shouldn't be the default. And the default assumption is, because multi-actions are -2 and -4, that most of the time you're only going to do one thing around. You're going to move and you're going to shoot somebody or punch somebody or whatever. And if you're doing all these multi-actions, it can get a bit much. And one of the players is complaining about it. So we need to keep that in mind as a group. The second person, and this again seems more like a player-to-player complaint, and this is why I worded it the way I did, right? So that if it's not something I'm doing, but something the other players are doing, they can talk about it, is I would like it if there were some way to limit the degree to which we are able to solve problems with arcane means. I know this is to some degree a matter of player builds and choices, and that you may be limited, the GM, may be limited in what you can do about it given these choices, right? We have 3 characters with arcane backgrounds, and they have a tendency, my players, to solve mysteries and problems using spells. For example, casting divination and asking the gods 5 yes or no questions to help them figure out what to do instead of figuring out themselves. Using object reading on a safe to find the combination and thereby skipping the multi-part episode of the campaign, one of the major set pieces of the campaign that's probably would have taken us 2 or 3 sessions to resolve, was completely skipped because they didn't have to go find the combination. Right? It was just object read. Using Puppet to mind control a guy when you have tons of PowerPoints, and it lasts 5 rounds. So what I said is you can ask 5 questions, mind control. You can make them do 5 actions, so you can ask them, force them to answer 5 questions, and then every time you want to ask 5 more questions, you got to spend another PowerPoint. But my best friend's character had 10 PowerPoints, so he could ask 50 questions, right, or close to that. So I think he ended up asking like 25. But they basically solved the whole mystery by mind controlling somebody who knew the what was going on because they were part of the cult, and then just asking them the right questions. Now I will say, I was very proud of them. They asked really good questions. They were very, very smart. Is Tanya here? Usually she's here. Don't see her here. They asked a lot of questions that were really smart. They were very clever about how they did it. One of the concerns they had was this guy is going to remember that he was puppeted. How do we fix that? And the one guy was an agent and came in with his Nemanizer, which is like the flashy thing from Men in Black, and allows you to like selectively erase memories with a skill roll and that kind of thing. And that's not her. And I guess we're going to have to probably clean this whole thing out because I have no idea where Tanya is. So anyway, they did Puppet to find out a whole bunch of things that they could have found out by just following clues and talking to people and investigating, right? So it sounds like at least one player would like to do more investigating. There she is. Would like to do more investigating than they have been doing, and would like them to stop using magical powers to nullify the need to investigate. Right? So again, this is a player thing, and the players, and we're gonna charge up domination so that we can use it on Tanya. And the players are essentially doing things that each other don't like so much, or would rather they did a little less of, right? And so, again, the players who were doing the divination and doing the object reading, they need to know that one of their fellow players actually kind of wishes they would do a little less of that. Now, there are 3 people with arcane backgrounds. One has done divination multiple times. The other 2 have both done object reading a couple of times, and one of them did puppet. And I don't know if it was the new girl who is the one that has the Texas Ranger, and so she's not magical, that wrote this, or if it was one of the people. But if it was one of the people with an arcane background that wrote this, I would laugh in their face because, like, dude, you guys are the ones doing this. It's like saying, please stop us from this stupid thing we are doing. Yeah. Don't do it if you don't want to do it. Third person that said one thing they wish you would stop or do less of is there's often been too much caution to the extent where some are reluctant or afraid to do things that would progress encounters or story or etc. And I think that's true. My group is incredibly cerebral and thoughtful, which is really great, but they can be so overthinking of things. They so overthink things. It can take them an hour to figure out something that they kind of know what they want to do in 10 minutes, and then they beat it to death. And sometimes orcs can attack, and sometimes I just let it go. But yeah, they tend to be very, very cautious. I got very frustrated with that when I was playing my Elven Bladesinger, and I kept feeling like she had to be the first through the door because they just wouldn't touch a door handle. They wouldn't open doors. They were like so paranoid. It's like, guys, let's just play, So I definitely agree that this group is overly cautious and can overdo the caution. I mean, and then every once in a while, like when they were in the Shrine of the Kuatoa and they just went bananas and started blasting fireballs all over the place, they throw caution to the winds. Often at the most inopportune times, they decide to throw caution to the winds and just say screw it. And it's like, wow, this is the one time I probably wouldn't have thrown caution to the winds. But it seems like, so these are things that they're saying essentially to each other. One person saying combat is dragging because you guys are doing too much multi-action. Another person is saying, I wish these guys would do a lot less arcane solutions to problems and actually use our brain to solve problems. And another person is saying, you guys are too cautious. The the fourth person, and this is something that I had not thought about, but I definitely want to make sure we keep in mind for this campaign, is stepping away from a campaign right after the big finale. It doesn't feel satisfying to end the party's story with a big boss fight. It would be great to have the opportunity to chase loose ends like cleansing the Shire in Lord of the Rings, have a fun skill challenge that determines the success of the characters and subsequent life goals, some sort of an epilogue, or even just a casual chat amongst the players about what happens next or what their favorite moments were. To just be fans of our own characters for a little while. I'm glad that with the current campaign we have the option to pursue side quests, even if we've solved the main mystery. And oh man, are there going to be side quests? I have really cool ideas for that. Okay, so we are almost ready to dominate here. We should be able to peel these guys out with teleport, and we'll be ready to dominate. I hope so. There we go. So domination's about up, but I'm going to go ahead and continue seeing if I can pull these guys. If we grab Tanya, I will definitely immediately use domination, but we have not grabbed Tanya, so we're all right. So yeah, I really like a lot of this. We finished the bad boss of the horror at Headstone Hill. We've got plenty of stuff to do. And one of the things I'm going to do, based on other comments that were said in answer to the last question, is I decided, so I'm not sure how much you guys know about this, but with my group, I created my version of Chaos from Jordan Callerman's campaign in the Wild Cards Deadlands game. And oh, I forgot to do these haunts. Should have done them first. And so what I decided to do was Chaos said she wanted to. What she said was she's the fifth Reckoner, right? There's the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? And then Chaos is the fifth Reckoner, and so oh man, elite boss. Wolf, please attack. He is so slow to attack ranged enemies. So there are the four Reckoners are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I created a fifth horseman of the apocalypse, Chaos, who's a female character, and she's pretty nasty. And in Deadlands, the Reckoners, each famine and war and pestilence and so forth, they each have one what they call a servitor, right? A servant that that the Reckoners use to kind of are going to use to kind of turn Earth into a hell that allows them to escape the extra dimensional area where they live. And so each one of them has a single guy that's really, really powerful. Jasper Stone is the one for death, and Ezekiel or Ezekiah Grimm is the one for famine, and Dr. Hellstrom is the one for pestilence, and Raven is the one for war. So what Chaos said is, the problem with all these servitors is, other than one of them, Hellstrom, they've all been defeated by teams, right? That the other Reckoners have underestimated the power of teamwork. And as a consequence, she wanted a team, and so she offered the posse to be her team. And of course they said no, because she's evil. And that's the end of this story arc, so we need another contact. Let's do Anton Sampson. And so they said no to her. Oh, we're in Founders Falls. I'm an idiot. So they said no to her, and she's doing some of the stuff at Headstone Hill. And I made her the force behind Headstone Hill, but just in sort of a vague way, right? She's the one who put the ghost rock there for the Aspens to find, and it turned them evil. And that's kind of really all that she's done there. She hasn't done that much. But what I decided is, since they want to go into like a legendary / heroic campaign, I said, okay, well, first I was going to have Chaos make a servitor, but then I said, actually, it'd be interesting if what Chaos did was, she said that I'm gonna make my posse, and she got 4 other people to agree. So I decided I'm gonna make an evil variant of each of the player characters. So an evil mad scientist, Dr. Helena Robards, daughter of Sir Clifton Robards, and from the Smith and Robards catalog and the Denver Pacific Railroad. Mad scientist. Um, the Joker is his name, Solomon Thayer, who's the head of the Royal Court. This is something from original Deadlands that I found out about tangentially. Basically, a really powerful huckster, so he's the evil huckster. Um, then there's a guy named, I think it's Samuel Cooley or something, who is an actual, real historic Texas Ranger who betrayed the Texas Rangers and became an outlaw. And so that's the evil Ranger. And then the evil blessed, I used a witch. So I'm going for Mina Devlin, who's the head of the Black River Rail, and is a very powerful witch. Now, they don't have the stats of a lot of these characters in Deadlands, the Weird West, but they have them in Deadlands Reloaded. And so I just took those stats and converted them, and those are going to be the 4. Hang on, let me just check something here. Okay, good. Just trying to make sure I'm muted in Discord. Don't want my players to hear this. Not that any of them should be listening in because I'm not in our chat room but right now, but just in case. So those 4 are going to be the bad guys, and the campaign will continue at the heroic level fighting them. And then if the players get to legendary, which they'll do if they defeat the 4 servitors of chaos and then defeat chaos, when you get to legendary, you get hunted down by Death's servitor, who's the only servitor still alive, still active. Hellstrom has quit, and Raven, in my lore, Raven and Grim are dead. I think in the official lore, Raven's not dead, but in my lore, he is, because I don't want anything to do with Raven. So, and Grim is dead. I don't really care about Famine. I don't find Famine to be interesting. I find Pestilence and Death and War to be the more interesting reckoners. And so Jasper Stone, when the party gets to legendary status, Jasper Stone is sent in to kill them. And he's unkillable unless you find the bullets that killed him originally, because he's undead, and melt them down into new bullets and kill him with them. So I feel like that sounds like a legendary quest, right? They're going to go find the bullets. They have to go to Gettysburg, which is a dead land, so it's really dangerous and powerful, and find the bullets and then, kill him. And they've got to do it before he finds them. So I'm probably going to set some sort of a ticking clock. And so there's a lot to still do, assuming they want to do it. I'm going to confirm with them that they do want to keep playing for quite a while, because I'm going to say, look, the idea I have is probably going to take us 8 to 10 sessions, so do you guys want to do that? Or do you want to just play a little while and then go back to D&D? It's up to you guys. But I hope they say they want to keep doing it, because this is pretty cool. And my best friend had said that he really wants to stop chaos, right? Like, we still have chaos to deal with, he said. And I really initially didn't have anything else for chaos to do, but now I really like this idea of an anti-posse that they're going to have to stop. Now, they're probably not going to fight them all at once. I also have this vague idea that I'm not sure. Maybe instead of having Jasper Stone come after them, it's 1884. There's a presidential election. Maybe Jasper Stone is going to try to assassinate one of the candidates, and they have to stop him. That might be kind of cool, too. So I have to think about that. But in any case, I definitely want to do this aftermath, and I love the idea of an epilogue, right, where we just do like 1 skill roll per player character and say, okay, like if you succeed, give me a general idea of what you want to do, and it'll be partially successful. If you succeed with the rage, you get to write your own ticket. If you fail, I'm going to decide what happens to your character, something like that. Might be kind of fun. All right, so I am going to pull this lieutenant out here so that he can't juice his buddies, because I'm getting sick of that. Of course I missed. All right, well, I guess he's going to juice his buddies. So yeah, I mean, I think that's actually a really cool idea. I'm going to actually go back and rewatch a little bit of the Deadlands Wildcards game, because that game they did do epilogues. and gosh, none of my mezzes worked. That's horrible. Um, they do epilogues and they ask some pretty cool questions, and so maybe we can I can ask the players to answer some of these questions. We can talk about what our favorite moment was. Like, if your character is Joe, what was your favorite Joe moment, or what was your favorite moment for each of the other characters? That kind of thing would be kind of cool. So that's what they disliked. Then finally, we have one thing you wish we would start doing. One person said more social challenge, conflicts, and dramatic tasks, and that sort of thing, so that we're not just doing battles, right? It's harder to dodge than battles. So one of the things that the players have done is they've often managed to completely avoid fighting battles. And I've said before that I think one of my mistakes when they did avoid one of the battles, which was the battle with the Headless Horseman, they just had to like bury the bodies properly with the heads. But what I should have done was made it a dramatic task, because then at least there would have been a challenge to it. So hopefully I'll try to remember to do that more. Um, but yeah, that's one thing that a lot of them like, is doing their dramatic challenges and the social conflicts. So more of those. So I can, yeah, I can do that. The next person said, I'd like to see story elements and adventures directly tied to character histories and backstories. I do recognize this puts additional work on you, the GM, to create content. I also think there would need to be balance over time so that every character gets a chance to be in the spotlight. So I think that hopefully what I'm doing with Chaos's servants will maybe work to do that, because each one of the servants is basically an antithetical version of one of the player characters, right? So the evil outlaw ranger, well, we have a ranger in the group, so she's going to feel probably very responsible and like it's part of her mission to get this guy back into the fold, because or to arrest him because he's a ranger gone rogue, right? So that's something from her backstory. The mad scientist character is from England, and so is Sir Clifford Robards. The reason I chose to do Dr. Helena Robards, who's his daughter, rather than Smith's daughter, because Smith is an American, I can't remember his first name, is because I can say that, well, maybe your character has met one of these guys before, either the Sir Robards or his daughter, because you guys are both from Britain, right? So that would be a background tie-in. The Huckster, um, what I'm going to use is something again from original Deadlands called the Royal Court, which is a group of people who 52 hucksters who actually are all identified by the decks of cards, and they're led by Solomon Thayer, who is actually a former colleague of Edmund Hoyle's, the guy who invented hucksterizing. And they uh, one of the guys, so they go by decks of cards and stuff, and one of the guys, I decided Jack Spade, the Jack of Spades, but he who goes by, it's not his real name, but he goes by the name Jack Spade, is the guy that the Huckster character stole her first book of Hoyle's games from. And so I think that that ties that into the background. I mean, that Huckster really doesn't have a whole lot in there, but anyway. And then the other one, the Blessed, I think one of the things I can do is possibly have the spirit that blessed that blessed worships. It's like an earth spirit. Possibly give some clues to the posse to help them figure things out. But also, uh, what I was thinking is that at the end, um, when they're looking for the bullets of Jasper Stone, those bullets were in the possession of the surgeon who tried to treat him and to dig the bullets out. In the book, Stone in a Hard Place, which is a Deadlands Reloaded campaign, that guy who was originally in Gettysburg has moved to the Louisiana Bayou. I could easily just relocate that to Indiana, which is where the priest, the Blessed, is from, and that would tie into his background. So, teleport only works when it works, when you hit, right? So hopefully that'll tie into the backstories. I'm really not sure what the whole obsession is with backstories and tying them into the main plot. I actually kind of feel like that's annoying in the sense that, it's one thing if it naturally fits. It's another thing when you're asking the GM to make it fit. And especially when you didn't give me much to work with, right? Like the huckster, all it says in the backstory is that she read a lot of the Tombstone Epitaph, okay, and that she found this book, or she was playing against a huckster, saw that he had the book, decided she wanted it, and we've leveled up. Pretty cool. She decided she wanted it, so she tried to tell him she was going to go back to his room with him and I guess fool around with him. And as soon as she got him alone, she got him drunk, and as soon as she got him alone, she hit him upside the head and stole his book. She doesn't name him. She doesn't say what town this was in, right? So what am I supposed to do? Just have this huckster show up? How do I tie that in? Well, I found a way to tie it in, partly because they asked me for this. I was thinking of ways to tie these things in. But I feel like if you're going to do that, if you're going to want your character, let me say this, guys. If you want your character's background tied into the campaign, you need to sit down with the GM and have a talk about it. And make sure you come up with a background that the GM says, I can easily tie this in. It is not fair to make up your character in isolation, having no knowledge of what the GM plans to do for the campaign or any major setting elements, and then expect the GM to somehow fit your character in and fit your background in. So, I don't know. I'm a little bit torn about this, but I think I've figured out how to do it. One of the reasons is because the second player requested this. It would be more interesting if there were player character hooks that could be explored, allowing our characters to be more invested in what's happening. Further, this would form greater attachment to not only our characters, but for the others as well. Our own characters, but for the others as well. I would really like this to be elaborated with an example or something. What do you mean by player character hooks? Are you talking about backstory, or are you talking about something else, right? So if, let's say this is the huckster's player, are you talking about you want other hucksters around? Are you talking about something else? Like, what do you mean by player character hooks? One of the things I've found with these is that the players often, when players write this stuff, and by the way, this is true for students when they're talking to you as well, they use buzzwords that kind of are very fluffy in the meaning. Like, what's a player character hook? What do you mean by that? Right? Are you talking about a backstory element? Like, what exactly are we talking about? Or like in one of the favorite lines, I don't know if they do this at every college, but at my college, is that a student will say, I'm asking you to work with me, right? And when I say to the student, what does that look like? Like, explain to me what could I do that you would consider would be me working with you? They don't have an answer. Are you letting you make up all of the assignments you missed? Is that me working with you? Is that what you're asking me to do? Right? It's a euphemism. Right? So what do you mean by player character hooks? Are you talking about backstory? Are you talking about your powers and characteristics? Are you talking about goals? Right? Because I had each of the players write their characters' goals. Are you saying you wish there were more of our goals were in the forefront? What exactly is it that you want, right? What do you mean by that? And I think that I'm going to probably ask that question. It's hard. I don't want to ask that question directly because then whoever said it is, it may be when we sit down and talk about this, people are going to own it, right? And my best friend may say, I said that one. And then I can say to him, okay, best friend, what do you mean by more player character hooks? Can you give me an example of using blood drive or using this? can you give me an example of a way that could have been a hook that I didn't do? Like, what's the opportunity I'm missing? Because what I've often found when you ask this question is the player or the student, like, they don't really know what they mean, right? They have this like vague sense that it could be better, but they don't have a lot of specifics about how it could be better. And then for me, it's like, okay, well, I'm making it as good as I can, right? So if it could be better, but you don't tell me how, like, what am I supposed to do about that? Right? If a student says you go too fast and you could slow down in class, I can work on that. But if they just say vaguely it's too hard, well, the material is the material. The textbook is the textbook. I'm teaching what's in the textbook. I kind of have to teach what's in the textbook, especially if it's a coordinated course with multiple other faculty and we collectively chose the textbook. So, what is it that I could do that would make it less hard? Students often don't know, right? And I think with this, sometimes players don't. Now, maybe this person will have a very specific answer. Don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Okay, we're going to finish Haunts. Let's get this done. We're going to finish Haunts. This is done. I definitely want to get Recharge up on that. I don't use this hardly at all. I don't use this hardly at all. I use this one a lot. I feel like we should up Living Shadows. And I'm going to up Moonbeam. Let's move on. So the last thing we should start doing, this was also really, really good. I've run interludes a couple of times in Deadlands. I haven't run it a lot. So an interlude in Deadlands is where you say to the players, okay, we're sitting around a camp. You're sitting around a campfire. So let's tell campfire stories. We draw from a card, and it says, okay, you're going to tell something like hearts is something positive that happened to your character. It can be something from your background. It can be something that happened today, whatever. And then you, like, anybody who tells a story gets a Benny, right? You tell an in-character story. And a lot of the players just pass because they can't think of anything on the fly. So this is what one of the players said. Move the interludes to the very start or end of a session with the option to do the interlude as a between the session creative project, such as an ultra short story like flash fiction, memes, a drawing, a cartoon, etc. I think this would be especially fun if we had time to think about them, or if they were spread out so that we could savor each person's story. For example, at the end of the session that isn't in the cusp of combat, DM, we're now in an interlude. Does anyone want to go before we wrap up? Player number 1, I'll go now, tells a story about how their character was affected by events in this session. Player 2 says, I'm going to write a one-page short story. Player 2 draws a picture. And Player 3 draws a funny stick figure comic. And Player 5 has time to think about their character backstory and tells it at the start of the next session. And then said, yes, I know too many players, but these were examples. And I think that's a really good idea. And I think it's a lot like what we used to do when we used to do journals. Except instead of having one person do a long journal for everybody, each person gets to do their thing. So I think what I might do is, at the end of the session, say, let's go ahead and start. And at the beginning of the next session, if you want to participate, you get a Benny. And if somebody doesn't want to actually participate in the interlude but wants to summarize the previous session, they can get a Benny for that too. And that'll give everybody a chance to gain a Benny, right? Which is better than just me giving it to the one person who recaps the story. What I may do is give everybody a Benny for the interlude and say, okay, then the person who doesn't, then the person who does the recap gets an adventure card instead, or something like that. Okay. Let me take a look at the IOs here and see. I don't think we have anything that's... Oh, well, this is our level. Do we need it? So a heal. We could use it on health. We got 3 of them. All right, let's pull them out. Let's go ahead and use them. So we'll take health out. Come on. So guys, those were the answers that my players gave. I think a lot of them were very good and gave me a lot of food for thought. A lot of them gave me ideas. There's a whole cool Reckoner storyline now that I wasn't going to do, and I'm now going to do in part because of that, because of the answers they gave me. So that's pretty cool. But they also basically leveled some mild, friendly criticism toward each other. And I think, it's one thing for me to make changes and start doing stuff on. The main thing is, okay, make sure you don't forget to do dramatic tasks and social conflicts, and then add more backstory stuff and the interludes, right? Those are the main three things. These are things I could put into effect like almost immediately, right? And the backstory thing might require a little work, but the other stuff is no skin off my back. It's pretty easy. A lot of the rest of the stuff that's actually going to require the largest amount of conversation is going to be that second category where the players are essentially saying, I wish the other players would do less of this thing, right? I wish the other players wouldn't use their arcane solutions for everything. I wish the other players would do less of something else. I don't have any masterwork weapons for some reason. I wish the other players would stop taking so many turns in combat. I wish the other players would stop being so cautious, right? So, like, pretty much the whole middle one, which was what is one thing you dislike about the game or wish we would stop doing or do less of, other than the one person who said stepping away from the campaign as soon as the giant the big boss mob fight is over, which is something we do as a group, not just me as a GM, that we all sort of agree to do. All the other three, we're saying, I don't like what some of the other players are doing, or wish they would do less. I think that is probably going to be the biggest conversation, right? Because the thing they wish we would start doing is something I as a GM have to do. There's really nothing to talk about. I'm probably going to ask for specifics about what do you mean by what kinds of things would you like to see in terms of character hooks and stuff like that, to give me some more specifics so that I know I'm on the right track. But these are things that I have to do that probably don't require a lot of discussion. And the first one is we all kind of like the way things are going and want a good balance of different types of gameplay. So those two aren't going to require a lot of discussion. And then the idea of continuing the campaign after the end of the story, well, we're doing that. And so we're kind of doing that. And that's, if we're going to do any more, that's going to happen at the end. So that really isn't anything up for debate. But this business of people doing too many things at once in a round, which is making combat bog down, is an issue that the players have to solve, because I don't do that. They do it. Not using arcane solutions to problems, but using our noggin instead, that's them. And then too much caution, that's them, right? So this is something that they as a group are going to need to talk about, possibly over Discord over time, maybe over more than one session. It may be the sort of thing where I may have to remind them, guys, you're being cautious, and one of you said you wished you wouldn't do that so much and you agreed to try and stop, or guys, you're using an arcane solution. Are you sure you want to do object reading here? We know that at least one player doesn't like this, right? Or guys, those of you who are doing slot speed and you're doing 3 actions per round, are you sure you want to do that? Because we know somebody doesn't like it, right? So I don't know if it's going to be that. I don't know what's going to come of this, because that section is almost entirely the players saying that they wish one or more of the other players would stop doing stuff. They're not saying there's something they wish I would stop doing, right? If somebody said like rolling in front of the screen, I wish I didn't know what your rolls were because secret rolls are more fun. That's something I could change. If somebody said, I wish you would stop randomly rolling to see who's going to be attacked, just do it. We trust you. Or if somebody said, I wish you'd stop, I don't know, always using the funny voices for the villains or something like that. Those are things I could stop. But I can't stop them from arcane solutions to problems, right? I mean, you could say, well, come up with a problem that can't be solved that way. Well, that's really difficult to do, given that my players Two of my players have abilities, one built into the archetype and the other one took an edge that allows it. Two of my players have the ability to basically cast almost any spell in the game now that they're heroic level, right? They anything of their rank or below. And so, um, and one of them actually can cast things above his rank. It's just penalties to do it. Maybe they both can. And now that they're heroic, there's very few powers above their rank. And so, not any power in the game, but any power on their spell list, which is like 40 powers. And between the two of them, they can probably cast all 60 powers in the game. So, and the ones they can't, the Blessed can do anyway. So, like, they have access to every spell in the game now. When you have access to every spell in the game, there are very few problems that GM can put in front of you that are supposed to be solved by brain power that you can't also help yourself solve with some kind of puppet, object reading, divination, detect, conceal, arcana, something, right? Going intangible and invisible and hiding somewhere and listening to a conversation that you wouldn't be able to spy on otherwise. Beast mind writing with beast friend, where you get control of a beast and you basically use it as a familiar, and 10 miles away you can still see. They've done that one before. They haven't done that too much in this game, but they did it in Coffin Rock a bunch of times, and it's just like, okay, if you do that, you're going to see things your characters shouldn't see, and you're going to solve the problem way faster. And I can GM negate that stuff, but then that's taking away player agency. Is that what you want me to do? Do you want me to say there are no animals around to be beast friends with, and just negate it? What do you guys want me to do? It sounds really like this is more of a them problem than a me problem, right? It is ridiculous to say, I'm going to take a power that will let me solve problems. GM, please come up with problems I can't solve this way. Then don't take that power, right? It'd be like me with this character, right? And I have this mind control. And I say, type to the COH devs, you need to make more villains resistant to this mind control power. How about I stop throwing it? And then I don't have to worry about it, right? So anyway, hopefully that's actually helpful. It took longer than I thought, but it actually was really cool to read through it and talk through with you guys. And I actually can't wait to converse with my group about this, hopefully after they get back to Headstone Hill and get out of the burning forest. And then I'm going to say, okay, like when I'm going to try to end the session a little early, like a half hour, 45 minutes early, and say, okay, I want to stop here. We need to discuss the results of the survey. Parts 1 and 3 are, 1 is like basically seems to be we enjoy what's going on for the most part. 3 is things I can do as a GM that we don't need a lot of discussion about. Is just put more character hooks and backstories and don't end the campaign right away, right? And more dramatic tasks. And that's not that hard for me to get through, and as long as none of the other players disagree, we can be done with that whole section in 5 minutes and with the first part in 5 minutes. What's going to take time to discuss is going to be these things where these guys are saying, you know, some of my fellow players are doing things that I wish they wouldn't do. And we may have to have a conversation about that. And that's why I worded it the way I did. So I do recommend when you ask the group this, phrase it that way. Say, what are things we're doing that you wish we would do less of? Rather than I'm doing. It's not that I didn't want the me feedback. I got me feedback on some of it, right? Like the backstories and dramatic tasks and that sort of stuff. But I had the sense that the players were possibly doing things that each other didn't like, and that's why I worded it that way, and it turned out to be true. So I don't think this is anything problematic. These aren't things that are destroying the game session for people, but it's like, okay, I'd have more fun if we weren't constantly everybody taking 3 actions per round. Like, it does make the combat bog down. So, yeah, I'm going to let you guys know what they said when we do that session. We're now level 36. This counts as the level 35 video, though, guys, because we just barely hit 36 at the end. So I will do a level 36 video shortly and post that. I do want to apologize for the length of time between video postings. The reason for that is entirely, well, 3 things. 1, because I already shot 2 videos of this and wasn't happy with them. I'm much happier with this one. 2, because I've been absolutely swamped with final exams. I'm giving them, not taking them, but I had to grade and everything else. I gave my last one today. I've still got to go and grade it. Go in and grade it tomorrow. I've been absolutely swamped. I've had a bunch of other crap to do at my house, and it's just been a mess ever since Thanksgiving. I've been just slammed. So that's part of it. And then the other part of it is that I got House Flipper 2, and I've been playing that a little bit, so that's distracted me as well. I tried making some videos about it and decided I don't think it's all that interesting to watch me do. If you want to see House Flipper 2, go ahead and drop a comment down. I may give you a little bit of those videos if you're interested. But otherwise, I'm not sure what I'm going to do after we finish this, but we got another 14 episodes with this character, so I will see you in the next episode. And until then, I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes.